incredible thing about this plan is it contains an unbelievable wealth of data, maps, resources, information, all in one place about Ulster County agriculture that you just won't find anywhere else. It is the result of a lot of hard work and collaboration with farmers, landowners, local governments, agricultural organizations, and the community. We are definitely due for an updated plan. It has been several decades since I don't know if it was it the first or at least the last version of the county's plan. And a lot has changed since it was adopted. We've seen big changes in what we grow and produce in this county. We've seen changes in the demographics of our farmers. We've seen changes in the amount of land that's being farmed. And we've seen big changes in agricultural markets. The longer term trend over the last 3 or 4 decades has been a loss of agricultural farmland in our county. But on the positive side, we have seen additions of farmland in recent years. And we're also seeing more diversity among our farmers, with more women, people of color, and younger people now farming, and side by side with our legacy farms that have been growing food here for generations. I live in the Rondout Valley, and it has some of the oldest continuously existing farms in the entire state. Some of the biggest changes that our farmers are facing are related to climate change. We're seeing longer growing seasons, which you can consider to be a good thing, but it's also brought much more unpredictable weather, more precipitation and flooding, and more pests and diseases. Farming is truly unlike any other profession on the front lines of climate change. And this report really takes that into account, unlike the first report, which the first plan, I don't think had one mention of climate change and the challenges farmers face. So a big part of our work has to be helping support our farmers in adapting to these changes and becoming more resilient to them. These changes that are occurring globally have huge implications for us here for food production and other parts of the globe and other parts of the country, which are going to see more and more droughts. We're in a very lucky place here in Ulster County with water. We actually have water, and we're really going to be a breadbasket in the future. And so preserving our farms is going to be critical to our future security, food security. So I want to just take a moment and thank the many people who have been involved in this plan. I want to start with our planning director in the back, Dennis Doyle, our senior planner, Bert Samuelson, who's played a huge role in this project, our deputy director that's over there, I think, typing away, Kristen Wilson in planning, Deborah Dewan, our agricultural services program administrator. For those of you who don't know, this is the first time, at least in a very long while, that the county has actually had a position devoted to agriculture. And I want to thank, there's a long line of my colleagues in the legislature sitting back there, and I want to thank you for making that possible. I also want to thank all our partners at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Ulster County and the County Soil and Water Conservation District, and Nan Stolzenberg of Community Planning Environmental Associates, who I am about to introduce. On a personal note, I had previously served in the state Senate as chair of the Agriculture Committee. And in 2 years, I spent a lot of time traveling around, visiting farms, visiting their operations, and gaining an incredible appreciation for the challenges that farmers face, how hard it is to be a farmer in New York and generally these days, but also how fortunate we are to have the incredible, rich diversity of farms, of small and medium. We have hundreds and hundreds of farms here in Ulster County producing an extraordinary diversity of products. We are lucky, and we have to really think about that and value it and protect it. And that is what this plan is intended to do. So I want to thank you all for being here. Please give your unvarnished comments after you hear the presentation. And I now want to turn it over to Nan Stolzenberg. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming, and thanks for the introduction, and really thank everybody in the county for getting to the point in this plan. It's been an honor working with everybody, and it's such an important thing because in so many places, agriculture is one of those things that's out there. It's like everybody knows there's agriculture out there, but it's something that doesn't have get the attention that other kinds of businesses get. And so any opportunity we have to highlight the wonderful things that are going on, as well as the challenges that our farms are taking, brings it into the realm of solving some of these challenges. So my role tonight is just to highlight the draft plan, and we'll welcome comments and opinions about it as we go along, and to let you know what the next steps are going to be from this point. And that doesn't seem to work. Let's see. Oh, no, that doesn't. Oh, these. Yep. Okay. Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Let's start off with why we have a plan, and was originally stated, the original Ulster County plan was from 1987. And indeed, there are many, many changes in agriculture and in the county that we need to take into consideration. But the New York State has a long history of valuing our farms and having policies established to promote farms. The New York State 25 Ag and Markets 25 AA has been guiding the Ag Districts program in New York State since the mid 1970s. And the state has many programs that has been put into place to promote and to ensure that the rich culture, heritage, and the food systems that we all rely on in New York State are taken care of. So the state has many policies and programs, including establishing this Ag and Farmland Protection Planning Program, which is available to both counties and at the town level, which many towns have taken advantage of as well. So we have New York State policy that promotes agriculture, and it works to ensure that we have farms and farmland. We have an Ulster County policy to recognize the importance of protecting agriculture, food security, capacity. We can't have farmland without farmers, and we can't have farmers unless it's economically successful for farmers to continue doing that. So Ulster County, through its policies and through working on this plan, recognizes the importance of agriculture as a critical component of sustainability for the entire county and all populations in the county, not just the farm community. And from a practical standpoint, why we have a plan is, has been noted, lots of changes, lots of challenges that farmers are continually buffeted with. The ag economy is tough. If you're even a small farmer or a large farmer, a lot of challenges, economic challenges. and other issues, as we'll see in a minute, that farmers have to deal with. On the positive side, there's always new techniques, new crops, new methods to be more efficient in agriculture. Certainly, a lot of those have changed since the 1980s. And I think my experience with developing these plans is the agricultural community often feels like it's not well understood by the rest of the community. And that can be a real problem when people don't know where their food comes from and they don't know how the food is grown. And so I think one of the roles of this plan is to elevate the importance of agriculture as a whole in the community. So we can have, as was mentioned, we can have the maps, we can have the data, we can have the information that will help from the town and village level all the way to the county level to help in decision-making that make things consistent with agriculture. Having this plan is helpful on a real practical level because it's needed for those farmers that want to participate in the New York State Farmland Protection Implementation Program and protect their land. The maps and the data that are in this plan is required for them to participate and work with the state to have easements on their property. It also opens up the county for additional funding opportunities through New York State Ag and Markets and the grant program that they have. So with that little bit of introduction, let's talk a little bit about the plan. First, to recognize that in addition to county planning that administered and facilitated and guided this, there was also a project advisory committee that was made up of representatives from all of these organizations, from the county economic development, cooperative extension, both the local office and the regional program, soil and water, the Office of the County Executive, and the Ulster County Ag and Farmland Protection Board, which has a role in reviewing the plan and moving it on to get to the legislature when we're ready to get to that point. So it's a group effort. It wasn't just a couple people. I think that's important to realize that we had representatives from all of the major organizations that are involved in agriculture in the county. So in general, what's in the plan? So it first is updates, and that should be 1987 instead of 1997. 1997, sorry, I got my dates mixed up. So it's funded by a grant from New York State Ag and Markets and the county. It was a matching program. There's three major components of the plan, like any kind of plan. It evaluates current conditions. We can't plan for something and know what we need in the future until we know what we have now. So a pretty substantial part of the plan includes information on what's the current conditions of agriculture in the county now. Through our public engagement, which I'll talk about in a minute, it identifies both the positive and the negative aspects of the agricultural climate right now, so that we can make sure that we preserve the strengths and address the negatives or the challenges. So the plan, all of the data that we learned, the maps, all of the ag economic data, all of our public engagement helps identify the positives and the negatives. And from that, we fashion a long-term vision and goals for the community. I think the planning philosophy is if you don't know where you're going to go, you're not going to know how to get there. So the plan establishes the vision and the goals so that it's like a benchmark, so that as decision making is done over the next 10 years or so, you can decide how much closer are you getting to that ultimate that you hope to get to. So the meat of the plan is then the third phase of this project, which is we know what we've got. We know where we want to go, and what are we going to do about it? What are the strategies and actions that we can take to realize that vision and reach those goals? So the plan offers a long series of ideas and potential actions that can be taken. And one thing that I'll interject here is that agriculture, like is from a farm perspective, is complex. It's not just putting a seed in the ground and watching it grow. There's a lot that goes into that. So it is with solving some of these challenges that affect our agricultural community. It's complex, and there's no one magic bullet. There's no one tool that will solve everything. So the toolbox is very large, and we have to try and have a diversity of solutions at different levels. So the plan addresses a wide variety of strategies to get us there. And as I mentioned, the plan is based on significant input from a variety of stakeholders, farmers, landowners, the agencies that are involved in agriculture, and the public. So I want to spend a minute just going over how we engage the public in this process, which is really, I think, is a foundational step, and make sure that the plan is relevant to Ulster County. So as I mentioned, we have a project advisory committee. They held meetings where we reviewed various steps and benchmarks along the way. The public was notified throughout the process through press releases, flyers that were put out about our survey. The agency newsletters had notes about the various activities that we were doing. There were regular social media and website updates along the way to keep the public informed. The formal part of our public engagement included 12 individual interviews that were about an hour, sometimes a little more, through stakeholders that were identified as important, had important perspectives on a commodity, a location, an activity, that we were able to interact with them and kind of pick their brain to learn about their perspective on what's going on with agriculture. The interviews were augmented with 6 different focus groups. The focus groups were included anywhere from 6 to 10 people that participated. Each one of the people that were involved in the focus groups also represented a different perspective. And so we talked to land trusts, we talked to orchard and fruit and berry growers, we talked to young and small farmers. And so we had a variety of, we had a lot of input that was kind of on small group settings that we could learn. We learned a lot about what they were feeling were positives and negatives and solutions to some of these issues. We also did 2 surveys. One was a public survey that explored the general community's perspective on what agriculture is, what that means to them, how do they interact with it, do they use local food products? If not, why, and how can we get them to participate more and buy more local food? So we're exploring, the general public's access to local food. And then we had a farmer and farmland owner survey where we asked different kinds of questions about what they were doing, what their challenge were, what their 5-year plans were, what their ideas for improvement and enhancement were. There were, through the planning office, regular reporting and presentation to the legislative committees. We're having this meeting tonight. And the Ag and Farmland Protection Board met on December 5th, and they're going to be meeting in early January again to go over public comments and the drafts. So we also have had significant exposure of the work that we've been doing. The Participate Ulster has been great, and the statistics that we've gotten show that the web page on the agricultural plan had been visited 865 times with lots of downloads. Many people use that to access the survey. And we, through the various organizations in the county, Cooperative Extension, the Rondout Valley Growers Association, Soil and Water, and so forth, had regular notifications of the survey so we could try and get the word out to people so that they could participate in the survey. There were press releases on both the survey, the work that we're doing, tonight's meeting, for example, ongoing social media posts. And I think there were 2 different radio shows that were done. So the message is that we tried throughout the project to inform the community and let them know, both the farm community and the general public, to know what we were doing and to give people opportunities to participate. So let's talk a minute about some of the things that we found. So the kind of current conditions of agriculture in Ulster County as of 2022, which was the last year of the United States Department of Agriculture census, which comes out every 7 years. So that's our most recent data, even though probably in the 2 years since that survey, that census was done, I can guarantee you there's changes even since then. But that's our best database that we have to work with. So there were at that time 486 farms that were identified. And in the ag census, a farm is defined as anything that earns $1,000 of income or more is counted as a farm. So that includes 486 farms. We have over 73,000 acres of farmland, which is about 10% of the county's land base in agriculture. And I think it's a really important message, is because a lot of people don't realize the economic impact that agriculture has on the community. So in 2022, $105.5 million in sales of agricultural products. That's, when everyone says, oh, well, we have industry and we have, maybe agriculture doesn't have a lot of jobs, but it has a lot of economic impact, very positive economic impact. Ulster County ranked 30th in terms of agricultural sales in New York State. Lot of direct sales. We see all over the direct sales, farm stands, agritourism events and things like that is increasing, is a trend. As farms try and diversify to earn more income, we see more direct sales. So 23% of the farm products sold were directly to consumers on farms or farmers markets or farm stands. The farms with hired labor, and that doesn't count the farm owners, it's the labor that they hire, 1,800 workers, and it ranked 4th of New York State counties in the size of its agricultural workforce. So those are substantial numbers. And compared to, the Hudson Valley has a lot of resources. I do a lot of these plans in the Mohawk Valley. Ulster County has like a lot of advantages over many of the other upstate communities. So I think those are substantial positives that we should celebrate and let everybody know, to show the positive impact that agriculture has on the county. Other positive trends is that the sales of agricultural products have increased 87% between 2002 and 2022. That's inflation adjusted. So we see an increasing amount of agricultural sales. As I mentioned before, we have high levels of direct sales. And 1/3 of the farms were valued at $1 million or more in terms of property value. So those are all significant positive trends. As I mentioned, agritourism is a growing aspect of agriculture in the county and has many benefits, not just economically, but bringing people closer to local food sources, educating people about agriculture and the role agriculture plays in the community, and its role in community character. which is really important to most people. But we have high, on average, sales, $117,000, which is higher than most other locations in New York State in terms of returns per farm. And we have growing breweries, cideries, distilleries, and wineries as a aspect of agritourism and value-added production. 48 farms with those. And again, since 2022, there may have been even more that have been added. One of the issues that we have, not just in Ulster County, but everywhere in the country, is an aging farm population. It's a significant issue, as most of the farmers, I think the average age is at least 60 years old. But we have 28% of the farm acreage is managed by farm operators under the age of 35. And that's a statistics that's great, but we gotta grow that number to move that up to keep these things going. But that's certainly more positive than other places, which is in single digits in some places. 10%, as I mentioned, 10% of the farm base in the county is farmed. We have about 48,000 acres of prime farmland soils. Of that, 12,000 acres are in production. So we have a lot of prime farmland soils, not all of them being used for production right now, but 12,000 acres of prime soils. And the good news is that if you look at the change in farms, that it's been relatively steady over the last 10 years or so. So that is a good statistic to see that we've lost some larger farms and gained some smaller farms, but the net number of farms has been relatively stable. Fruit in the orchard, fruit and berry end of the agricultural industry in the county is another success, super strong part of the agricultural community. Orchards cover about 86,000 or 8,600 acres of land. Most of that is in apple production, but there are certainly a wide variety of other fruits and berries that are grown. Ulster County ranked second in the state after Wayne County in the sales of fruits and berries, and ranked third in the number of orchards and land in orchards in the state. So those are things to celebrate and to promote and to market and to be proud of and to work towards keeping. And the other thing that's like, I think a super strong aspect is, again, that generational nature of family farms, multi-generational following through. It's a significant issue of how we transfer farms from one generation to the other. So to see multi-generation farms continuing is always a positive. So with the positives, we also have challenges and negatives. And maybe I should have called this challenges instead of negatives, but what are some of these? Well, if you dive deeper into some of the statistics, you'll see that a smaller number of farms, 21% of all of those 486 or 483 farms, earn 95% of that farm income. So we have few farms earning a lot of money, and we have a lot of farms earning less money. And that's the statistics, not just in Ulster County. We see that all over, certainly New York State, where we see a lot of the sales are generated by a few number of farms. We've seen a decline in dairy, again, not just an Ulster County issue, certainly a New York State issue for sure. Milk sales declined 79%. So dairy has had a lot of challenges here, a lot of challenges everywhere. But that's certainly a challenging trend. The other one that is something to keep in mind while we have a lot of this money coming in from agricultural sales, when you ask farmers about their profitability, 35% of them said they earned a profit. Costs of doing farming is super high. It's really hard. Commodity prices are low, sale prices are low. It's hard to make a profit in farming, which is kind of like this circular problem. The harder it is to earn a good income, the harder it is to get young people to want to farm and do it as a career. So we have these multiple issues that influence what's going on. And again, going back to the aging farm population, 5 times more people of producers that are over 65 years old than under. So while we have that 28% of farms have younger people who are operating them, we still have an aging farm population that we have to address. So some other changes that we've seen, we have some land in the county that's preserved through conservation easements, 93 different parcels, which cover about a little over 5,300 acres of land, of which a little less than half of that is actively farmed. Some of those other acres are in open space, forest land, or not actively farmed. This next one is both good and bad. 33% of the farmland acres are on rented land. So it's good that there's land still available for farmers to rent. Farmers most farmers need to expand in order to expand or maintain their production. They need to rent land beyond their home base. So it's good that there's rented land available. And we heard in our focus groups and our survey kind of over and over, though, that the rented land can also be an issue because the landowners don't know about agriculture. They don't know what they're really getting into. They don't have leases. They don't know how to have a lease. They find out, oh, someone's out there at midnight spraying or spreading manure or making noise. And they're like, oh, we didn't realize that. So rented land it's a kind of a double-edged sword. We've seen a decline in that mid-size in larger farms. If you look at the statistics, so we've seen a decline in the farms that are 189 acres, which is that cutoff there. But we see a lot more smaller farms, and that also is something we see in lots of places where people aren't farming 300 acres. They're looking for 10 acres or 20 acres, or sometimes 1 acre. We have 1 acre or 2 acres of cut flowers. So we have a diversifying kind of farm base on smaller parcels, which is a different kind of agriculture than the traditional 300 acre dairy farm or orchard. So those kinds of farms have different needs. The other statistic with changes is between 2014 and 2023, there's been 2,083 new homes built in the county. And again, I'm sure that number is different in the last couple of years. And we've had 111 agricultural parcels that have been converted to other uses. So we have had a loss of farmland. And that development pressure was also an issue that was identified over and over again about the loss of the farmland and the related issues that come with that, such as increased property values, increased rents, hard to purchase land, fragmented land. So you have a field way over here and you have to go on the highway to get to land over here. So the development has lots of fingers of impacts when it kind of starts impacting that, what we call that critical mass of farmland that we need to keep things efficient for the farmers. So let's talk a little bit now more in detail about some of the different components of the plan itself. As I mentioned, that there's a lot of data on the conditions and trends. There's a whole series of maps that will serve both at the county level, and I hope through one of the suggestions in here was to get these maps to towns and villages, so they have the availability of using all of that data. So when they're doing local zoning, local comprehensive plans, they can take advantage of this data that we have amassed for the county. We have a set of vision and goals. These are the kind of the aspirational motherhood and apple pie kind of, this is our lofty direction that we want to go. But I think those are really important because we want to be able to set that direction, to know how close we're reaching that. So I think the vision and goals are important to articulate in a plan so everybody knows what we're trying to work towards. This toolbox of strategies and actions is split into 4 main chapters, and that is on agricultural economic viability. The second one is on farmland and land use. The third one is oriented to resiliency and sustainability. And then the fourth one is supportive infrastructure. What kinds of infrastructure, both in terms of buildings as well as technical support and educational support, do we need to support our farm community? A really important chapter, I think, is the implementation steps. It's great to have a plan and have a vision and have all these maps, but if we don't put this plan to work, it's just another sit on the shelf plan, which is what we don't want. We want this plan to be active. We want it to be referred to at all levels of government. We want it to be a guide that people can use, farmers can use, and landowners can use to help in their own decision making. So the implementation steps of what should happen first, how should the county go about implementing this plan, what are the strategies that need to take place, I think is really a really important part that we shouldn't ignore. The other piece that I wanted to point out is that there's one component that the state looks for in funding this program, and that is that they want to see a map that identifies priority farmlands. And so we went through an analysis that evaluated all sorts of different characteristics of the land and its ability to support farms to come up with a map that highlights areas in the county that are have characteristics that make them important farmlands. And that is, I think, important from a decision-making point of view, but that is the tool that an individual farmer who wants to work with the Farmland Protection Implementation Grant Program needs to show when they apply to the state that their farm is included in that area identified as priority, because that's a criteria that the state uses. So this map has practical use in that way. So there's also 10 different appendices that add all the agricultural economic data that analyzes each commodity and each type of farm and all the farmland data in there. There's quite an extensive, what we called an agricultural resource inventory, that is a tool that lists all of the organizations locally, county, state, regionally, and nationally of where, what the resources are that we can use to help implement the plan. And one of the problems that I have seen is that there's really are a lot of programs out there to help farmers, but farmers are really busy and they don't often have time to sort through website after website to look and find out where these things are. So this was our attempt to put it all in one place, kind of a one-stop shop to look at the different programs and tools that are out there to help folks. The other thing that is not listed on the slide, but one of the things that we also did was an audit of 4 town level zoning, subdivision, and comprehensive plans to evaluate how farm friendly they were, because at the local level, land use decisions highly affect farmers and their ability to maintain their farm and grow and attract new farmers. And so we evaluated as kind of 4 models in the county of towns to look at what kinds of local zoning improvements can be made to make those zoning laws more farm friendly. And that could be translated into models that all of the towns in the county could use. Just to get everyone familiar, this is a map of the New York State agricultural districts in the county. And so those are developed through the New York State Ag and Markets 25AA. It's a voluntary program. Farmers and landowners can request to be added to the program on a voluntary basis, and it's reviewed, and those ag districts are reviewed on a regular basis through the county, but it's grounded in the state ag districts program. So you can see down in the lower southeast corner of the county is certainly a concentration of those ag district properties. This is just a few snippets of some of the maps, what they look like in the plan. This one shows the different agricultural types. Again, you can see in the southeast corner of the town, that concentration, a lot of orchards down there. But each color represents a different type of farm. This data comes from the real property data. So it's not always 100% accurate because it comes from the local assessors. The local assessor looks at a parcel and says, oh, they have cattle there, or it's an orchard. But so it's a great approximation and gives us an idea of what's what and what's going on and how much there is, but it's not always 100%. Because of how that's interpreted. So, but this gives us a good view. Again, it matches pretty much where the ag district locations are. Here's another example where we tried to evaluate the conversion pressure, like what farms are being converted from farmland into non-farm uses. So this kind of looks at the assessment. Again, it goes back to the assessment data collected by town level assessors. And you can see the colored parcels represent some sort of change. So the purple color, it's a little harder to see on that screen than on the computer, but there were 2,422 parcel acres that were converted from agriculture to something else. But we also had land that was, and I don't think we should consider this next one, almost 3,000 acres of land to agriculture. I think that's an anomaly of assessors calling different types of land uses different things from one year to the other. But again, this gives us an approximation of where changes are taking place and helps us identify where those conversion pressures. It's one data point to help us learn about those conversion pressures. This is the priority farmland map that I mentioned. So you can see the green areas that are shaded represent the area that has broadly been identified in the county as priority farmland areas based on the criteria that we analyzed and that was agreed upon as important factors that define that farmland. And you can see, we know that these also have interaction between our towns and villages and city and growth and water and sewer districts. So those are on the map. So we can see the interrelationship between where the growth, where those infrastructures are taking place and priority farmland areas. So the light and the dark colors represent, so we had, I don't know, 10 or 15 different criteria that go into defining prime farm or priority farmland areas that are ranked. It's a computerized program that looks at each parcel, analyzes each parcel, and you actually get a score. And so those colors show the score of how that parcel rating it from average to below average, all the way up to above average. So the darker the color gets, the higher the score that that parcel had gotten. So again, it gives us an idea of within, basically, we have lots of priority farmland areas in the eastern part of the county, but within that, we have certain areas that those farm parcels met a lot of those criteria as a key to, again, to help start making decisions of how we balance growth and development and the need for more housing and all of these other things with maintaining our farmlands. So it should be a tool. So the vision for the future, again, I think is important. It's aspirational. We want to foster a thriving, resilient, and sustainable agricultural community that honors the rich agricultural heritage and embracing innovative practices for the future growth. And then each one of these kind of sub-vision statements is reflected in the rest of the plan and how we've organized the rest of the plan, from being economically viable, having land that's accessible and available, that we have resilient and sustainable farming practices, educational and technical assistance, partnerships, which is a huge part of the solution, is collaboration and working together on some of these solutions, innovation and not being afraid of innovating and thinking out of the box, and to celebrate the wonderful cultural heritage that you have in Ulster County. So those are all encapsulated in the vision statement. Then the vision statement is taken one step more specific to establish a set of goals that follow through on those themes. Again, ensuring, this is like a little more detailed level, ensuring profitability. As I mentioned before, we can't maintain farmland unless we have profitable farmers and make it attractive for people who want to actually do that and to stay in doing farming. And enhancing agritourism. We've certainly recognized the value of agritourism, both to help farms diversify and to bring more folks in close proximity to their local food. We need to foster our next generation of farmers. We have to identify and protect critical farmland areas. We want to reduce adverse farm and non-farm interactions. And that's one of the things that also came out in our public engagement, was that some farmers have issues when their farmland is fragmented with non-farm owners. Then we often see a rise in nuisance complaints. People get concerned about getting stuck behind a tractor moving slow on the road, or messy roads, mud on the roads. I mean, those are the kinds of things that people complain about. So we see, with more mixing of farm and non-farm, we see an increase in those adverse interactions that we want to reduce. We want to enhance outreach to decision makers. So that's great that we have the county executive and legislators here, but at all levels of local government, we need to elevate everyone's understanding of the role agriculture plays in their community, from a community character point of view, as well as an economic perspective. So that is just another goal to reach for. We want to promote the environmental sustainability and climate resiliency. I think it was I forget which focus group it was. One of the focus groups said that Ulster County with climate change is going to be the new New Jersey. So Ulster County will have the climate that New Jersey had traditionally. And so we have to recognize that that changes a lot of things about our growing, our seasons, and the crops that we can grow and when we can grow them. Enhancing collaboration and communication is something that every plan that I've worked on like this is we see too many silos. One organization does its thing, another organization does its thing, and everyone's doing their kind of pocket, but not working together. And so our hope is that this plan will be the unifying document that everybody could work towards and have a collaboration. So everyone's taking their piece of the solution, but not working not necessarily at cross purposes, but it's not unusual at all for one group to embark on some great project only to find out that another group had done the same project 4 years ago or 2 years ago. It happens all the time. That's the kind of efficiency we need to build and build that collaboration. Enhancing educational programs, that's both for the general public as well as technical assistance to the farmers, and attracting new farmers. Ulster County is in a great position compared to many, many other counties in the state of being accessible to New York City and folks who want to try their hand at farming and having markets that are relatively close. I'm up in Schoharie County, which is not all that far away, but it's like a totally different environment. Like Schoharie County is like in a different country, you know, compared. So you're in a really good location to attract new farmers, but we have to work at attracting new farmers. It doesn't just happen on its own. So we have our toolbox, as I said, organized into those 4 main topics: economic viability, farmland and land use, resiliency and sustainability, and supportive infrastructure. And so we have over 100 strategies and actions that are spread out among those 4 topics. And this is just highlight of the details to kind of get you familiar with what's in there. But some of the key recommendations for each topic in economic viability, we have strategies and actions oriented to expand tourism, doing a better job of marketing and promotion. And that's both marketing and promotion of the products of the agricultural activities, as well as bringing in new folks to come to the county to farm. Farm business development, farmers are, you know, great at farming, and oftentimes the business development, long-term business, doing business plans and things like that are harder to do. So we need to work on farm business development for long-term sustainability, increasing market access, so finding new markets for agricultural products, and improving processing and distribution so that we can get the products aggregated and help smaller farmers distribute their products to the close urban areas that you have nearby. In the farmland and land use category, it's relatively simple, hard to do, but relatively focused on efforts and programs and projects to protect critical farmlands and to work at promoting farm-friendly land use policies at all levels. There's many strategies that are listed in the plan to help local communities understand how to enhance the definitions of agriculture in your local zoning code, which is actually an issue in many, many places. We don't have, you know, there's a definition in the zoning farm. Well, these days when a farm has multiple businesses on a farm and multiple different kinds of activities going on, they're much more complex and diverse than a farm, and the zoning needs to reflect that. That's what makes them farm friendly. So those are the kinds of actions and strategies that are included in this section. Under resiliency and sustainability, there's a lot of attention given to actions and strategies to help the county move farmers to help adapt to climate change, as we've talked about, and increasing educational and technical aid and access to those resources. You have great, you know, between Soil and Water and Cooperative Extension and some of the other organizations, the Growers Association, you have the tools here. We just have to continue and grow those and collaborate with those. So under supportive infrastructure, that includes strategies related to improving processing and distribution, food hub kinds of aggregation activities, educational programs. And this last one is really important, farm worker housing. That came up as a really important, especially when we talk to the young farmers and the new farmer group. That is a significant issue, is that people cannot, and it's not just the seasonal workers that come in that need housing. It's new folks who want to come to the county to farm, can't find a house or an affordable house to live. So farm worker includes the farm laborers as well as farmers and the farmland operators and managers. That's a significant issue that needs to be addressed. So out of these 100 or so actions and strategies that we have identified a subset that have been identified as priority actions to start work on. So these are shorter term, maybe longer term, but focused on where we can, I don't want to say have the biggest bang for the buck, but to focus our efforts to get things started. So those priorities were to create a website that's dedicated to promoting local farms. We need a one-stop shop for farming, where people can go to find where direct sales, where can they go and buy berries or whatever, or local meats, as well as the other side, where can farmers go to find the resources that they need. It's like too many places around, and no one has the time to search and hunt through all these different websites. So this is seen as like a portal to help organize that. To work on a county revolving loan fund for expansion, startups, and diversification. Startup, especially for the new farmers, is really expensive to get into farming, very hard unless you come from a farm family and it's a transition from a farm family, really hard to get into it. We need to find ways to promote helping people get involved in it. So a revolving loan fund is certainly something that was seen as a priority. It's further exploring the feasibility of a food hub for smaller farms. Smaller farms have a problem was like to get your food into a major grocery store, they need volume, and they need more than a 10-acre tomato farm can provide. So it's that aggregation and then distribution that is really important. So that was one of the priority actions. Developing funding mechanisms at the county level to finance farmland protection efforts. Many counties have local purchase of development rights programs. Many of them have various programs that work in coordination with other grant programs to fund easements or purchases of lands to protect those critical lands. Implementing climate smart agricultural practices, which also includes the next one, increasing soil carbon sequestration practices, are at the top of the list for addressing climate change. That's a lot of the work that Soil and Water is already doing that needs to be expanded so that they can reach more farms in a more widespread manner. This next one, which I talked about, is promoting this notion of farm-friendly local land use regulations. That is things that the county can do by creating model definitions, a model zoning law that addresses how a zoning law can be farm-friendly, doing trainings to planning boards, doing a training with zoning board of appeals or assessors, so that they're familiar with how agriculture works in their community. Super, super important. And then the other thing that to address the farm worker housing was one of the priorities identified was to evaluate the feasibility of finding a site as a pilot for farm worker housing to be developed. There's a lot of the affordable housing overall is also complex, but to start working on a project to find creative and innovative ways to address the farm worker housing issue. So the implementation, excuse me, section of the plan details these priority projects. So there's a page and a little chart like this for each one of those priority projects that lists specific action steps that can be taken to start that project, as well as who should be involved, who the partners would be in doing that, potential costs that it would take, potential funding sources, and time frame. Is it a short-term project that you can do? Can you get a website up in the next 3 or 4 months? Sure. Is it something to do farm worker housing? Probably not in 3 or 4 months. So we've tried to give you tools to get you started on these priority projects. And then with a reference of where the details in the plan are about that. So you'll see that each priority action has that implementation chart to help start things off. So the other implementation steps, narrative that's in that chapter, are oriented to this coordination, collaboration, continuing to provide leadership and promoting agriculture is something really important in the county, and funding. So the idea that's promoted is to create this Ulster County Agricultural Coordinating Council to bring all those groups together to collaboratively work on those priority issues so that we're not siloed and that everyone is working together and taking their appropriate piece and working together. Increasing funding, a lot of these things don't just poof out of the air. So there is funding that's needed. And so we are looking to support cooperative extension and soil and water because they have significant roles to play in many of those priority actions. Monitoring and evaluation. We don't want this to sit on the shelf and not be looked at for the next 10 years. So we want to set up benchmarks and monitoring, keep it on the minds of everybody so it stays relevant. You can certainly go back and amend this plan if something changes, but we want to make sure that it's kept current and it's kept, there's benchmarking and evaluation. And of course, ongoing public engagement. We have to keep the public aware and involved in agriculture and understanding where their food comes, building that local food system and those connections. So, it's great. We'll have hopefully the legislature will adopt this plan, but that's the beginning and not the end of this process. So the steps that we're take from this draft plan to hopefully an adopted plan, we're kind of in step 2 now. The Ag and Farmland Protection Board has done their initial review on it. We're doing public review now, and then we will gather those comments. If we need any tweaks or adjustments to the plan, we'll make those. It will go back in January to the Ag and Farmland Protection Board for their review. And then the plan hopefully will then make it to the county legislature. The county legislature is required to do a public hearing in a seeker, which is the State Environmental Quality Review. So there's a review to make sure there's nothing in the plan that would do adverse environmental impacts. Ultimately, the plan is adopted by the county legislature, so they're kind of the owners of the plan. And then the last step is after the legislature approves it, it goes on to the New York State Department of Ag and Markets for the final review. And when they have reviewed it and approved it, they send back correspondence to the county saying that they have approved it. So that's kind of the highlights of the plan. You can visit the Participate Ulster County ny.gov for more information. Download the plan, look at the maps, get information about it. There's Bert's email if you wanted to contact him directly. And Kristen wanted me to also, for those folks who are on Zoom, to, if you have any questions or comments, is to type your question into the Q&A button at the bottom. So that's the highlight. I'll turn it back over to Bert and hopefully we can answer your questions.
Dan is going to bring up the document. If anyone wants to make a comment, there, it might go over there.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
First of all, I want to applaud you for finally doing the update on the plan. 1997 to now is way too long.
Whoops.
Anyway, I'd like to talk. I had 4 points I wanted to talk about, but first of all, I have the distinct honor of being the only farmer in the Ulster County Legislature. Also, probably
Yeah.
one of only a few farmers
Yes.
in all of Ulster County government. Education of agriculture in this county needs to be brought into the 21st century. It's lacking. People don't know where the food comes and they don't know how it's made. I happen to be a multi-generational farmer. My family came here, immigrated here in 1640, and right up to today, we're still farming. Out of the 468 farms, there's no dairy left in this county. None which, right? Do you know of any dairy farmers, Jake? No dairy farmers. Oh, there's 3 out of hundreds when I was growing up. There's probably only 24 livestock farmers left in the county, of which there were hundreds when I grew up. The closest USDA facility now for me is 94 miles away. Growing up, there were 24 USDA facilities within 25, a radius of 25 miles of our farm. Anyway, to talk about specifics, looking at the goals and the implementation steps. You talk about funding and resources. I think it's great to set up a revolving loan. But I would suggest that any farmer who's thinking about selling their development rights, go talk to their lending institution. Because right now you can go and you can use your farm as collateral if you want to build a new barn or buy a new tractor, which I don't know, now the cost of a tractor is like $150,000 and up. Because once you sell your development rights, you've diminished your asset. So you no longer have that collateral. So any farmer that's thinking about it, please talk to your lending institution first. Then you talk about resiliency and sustainability. Right now, I mean, the county does, the towns, the villages, the cities buy products through the Office of General Services commodity contracts, whereby the state puts out a contract, like for salt, for instance, and the contract's for 10 million tons. By having a quantity like that, there's an economy of savings. So I think maybe the county could look toward having commodities that farmers utilize, like fuel, seed, fertilizer, lime, electricity, that if you could form, for the better, lack of a better term, a co-op, so that those quantities can be purchased at a much lower price, which will save farmers money. And it gives them that one place that you were talking about to go and get your products. I think that would help immensely. I already spoke about the need for a USDA facility. I've been fighting for 25, 30 years, trying to get one in the Hudson Valley. I gained some traction a couple of years ago. I was able to get Senator Hinchy, who is the current chair of the Ag. She got $5 million in the governor's budget to put towards a facility in the Hudson Valley or expanding an existing facility. The only issue we have is the NIMBY issue. Nobody wants it in their town. And I think the county and the state government could look towards changing those zoning laws that you talk about and educating people. Because if you go in a current USDA facility, you can literally eat off the floor. It's not the blood and guts that's running down the gully, you know, in your town. That's not it. Actually, there's one not too far away that's in a housing development. I drove past it twice trying to find it because there's no way I thought that was a facility. So education is key. Last but not least, you know, we talk about how we can help farmers and you talk about grants and those types of things. I don't know of one farmer that likes doing paperwork. Our farm is a state, we're in Ag District 1, we're a state listed farm. My farm happens to also be a federally listed farm, which means at the end of this month, I have a 36-page report I have to fill out and send to the federal government. And I will tell you, it's not an easy task for me, and I'm used to paperwork. And you know, my brother and I have luckily have very good jobs, and a lot of our income goes to support the farm, not the other way around. Our farm does not turn a profit on its own, and a lot of that has to do with taxes and land taxes. And farmers in this county are stewards of open land. Everyone talks about how great open land is and how we live in a rural, most beautiful portion of the world, not only the United States. And a lot of that is born on the back of the farmers that keep it open, that take care of the land, they're stewards of the land. I think if we really wanted to promote farming, keep farming, which is a huge economic driver in this county, that we would look towards maybe giving them, instead of a grant, give them a tax break for keeping open land, for keeping agriculture in our county. Give them a tax break, rather than have them sit down and try to fill out a grant that they really don't want to do because all they want to do is farm. They really don't want to be sitting doing paperwork. Larger farms do get the grants because they have a staff of lawyers that all they do is sit down and search for grants and write paperwork out. Your local family farm does not have that, which is why they're all going out of business. And I belong to one of those age groups, but I don't think it's the under 35.
You are a tough act to follow, sir. I'm Elizabeth Ryan. I'm a grower in Ulster County, also Dutchess. And this is an epic piece of work. I actually tried to read it a couple of nights ago. I was pretty sure it was as big as a phone book, and it's very, very comprehensive. I think it's one of the best pieces of work in all the years I've been farming, and I've seen a few of these things. I think it is wide and it is deep, and there's a lot of information. And I haven't really taken it all in. And the end point of the whole thing is obviously how is it going to be implemented? What's going to really happen here? But I did come here tonight to express some notes of concern. And that, I think I can say simply as the rate of change that we're experiencing, and I'm a fruit grower in the valley, in terms of increase of land values, all of the things that you've checked off is happening very, very, very rapidly. And I actually think that you've been even a little conservative in your approach. I think we've lost more farms than this study says. It's not because you didn't try. It's hard to get at that data, you know, in a short time frame. I also have concerns about our ag workforce. I mean, you've checked all my boxes about housing and saving land and saving farmers and getting more money in the system. All those things are tremendously important, but we're also at a moment where our food and ag workforces are significantly immigrant communities, and I'm very concerned about how we're going to support and protect them. And I'm very concerned about how we're going to manage to grow reasonable quantities of food and serve it on a plate without them. So I know that's not really your purview, but I think that's a piece of all of this.
Good evening. My name is Liana Hoods. I live in the town of Shangam. And I also work for the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York. And so I would like to first note that we were not contacted at all to be a stakeholder, but we will certainly submit comments and are really appreciative of this plan. Really comprehensive. It's great in many ways. Not that I've read the whole thing yet. Not yet. But you identified the Northeast Organic Farming Association in general. There are 7 unique organizations, and New York has its own organization. And so the description of what we do in your charts is not correct. We do offer the top program, Transition to Organic Farming Partnership, which is a USDA program, and we offer any farmer assistance in transitioning to organic. But we also are implementing the Climate Smart Commodities grants through NRCS, where we are giving funds to farmers who certify organic or not to try out climate smart practices. So that is available, and we have a Hudson Valley coordinator doing that. That's to all farmers in New York. And I note that NOFA New York is the biggest certifier, organic certifier, USDA organic in the state, but we also, our goals are to promote regenerative organic agriculture and food. And those practices of organic practices that many of our farmers, certified or not, in Ulster County are practicing are the climate smart practices. They sequester carbon, organic soils sequester carbon, and there many practices will benefit us going forward. So I would encourage you to look at organic practices and the marketplace for organic. Demand for organic has really been very steady for the 20 plus years of the federal program, but since COVID, the New York City marketplace is huge demand, and we can take part of that. We see that with our farmers they don't need to be certified, but customers want to see those practices. So I encourage that as well. And NOFA New York can give some education and technical assistance as well. As far as other parts of the plan, I'm really interested in that you proposed a committee for services. I would love to see the county commit to an agricultural services coordinator, ramp up Deborah Dewan's position, and have that person take leadership to help our farmers find all those programs so that they are not searching on the web constantly for ever-changing programs, but have someone in the county who can help them with that, who can also take a vision a step above what each department, cooperative extension has its piece, soil and water has its piece. we need a county-wide vision and administration of our agricultural services for the farmers to make it easier for them. Absolutely, meat processing, actually processing altogether. We know if I looked at a project that someone proposed for the iPark 87 for a dairy processor. We don't have dairy farm. We have virtually none, but the demand for instance, local, regional, and organic milk in the Hudson Valley, in the New York City marketplace, and in fact of all the Northeast, is completely unmet. We cannot provide enough for the demand that's there. So whether or not we have those farmers anymore, which is such a shame, we are a hub for processing as well in terms of the transportation routes. Finally, I didn't see anything, and I may have missed it, about the effect of solar farms and the issue of agrivoltaics. With some leadership, we can continue to have solar farms, but that also have agriculture underneath them. It's not a huge leap to have that, and we then can have save some of our farmland at the same time the farmers can get that payment for those solar farms. So the agrivoltaics is a big deal that I think we need to take the lead in, because our land is going away from that. So thank you.
Yeah, I have a few questions from the chat. Hi, I'm Kristen Wilson, Deputy Director of Planning. So we have one from Kaimara Lonergan, and she says, or he says, I'm not sure, or they, say we have to sell 10,000 of what we produce to be considered for a farm tax break. Then we have high taxes, so it's like shoveling a mountain with a teaspoon for small farmers to make a profit. How are we supposed to earn decent profits when the property taxes are so high? So I don't know if you want to answer that or just take that as a comment. Yeah.
You have to gross $10,000, not profit $10,000.
So Jake is saying that you have to gross $10,000, not profit $10,000.
Right. And that comes
I-
from the state. That's a state. I
That's
mean,
a state.
to get the ag assessment, that comes from New York State.
Can you say that into the microphone just so that everybody?
Sorry, I said the rule for getting an agricultural assessment is set through New York State. It's not a county rule. So the 10,000 gross sales on 7 acres of land, or 50,000 on less than 7 acres of land, is set through the state. 7.5.
I have another question from somebody else, unless there's somebody from the audience that wants to, we could go back and forth.
Hi, my name is Stefano. I own the Meat Wagon Butchery in Kingston. So I do see that there's the implementation programs for easements and loan funds for farm diversification. But again, what about production? There's no USDA facility that does just production, let alone slaughter within Ulster County. And all of these new farms that are popping up, they don't have a spot to process. Even if they do get a slaughter spot, they're pretty much just eating their own animal because they don't have a way to further get them into the hands of people with the USDA stamp. And that's again, like, I'm a small business. I've been in business for almost 4 years now, and doing a grant is, it's not the most easy process. And it's, for me, being a small business owner, the information is not very accessible. So I do hope that it will be more accessible for myself to be able to hopefully start some sort of production facility with the help of New York State.
Just two. So this is from Peter Criswell. And the question is, are there any statistics on ag parcels that were transformed into solar fields?
No. That's a project.
And no, the answer is no, that's a project into itself. And then the next question is from Kristen Kessler. The question is, will this plan address urban agriculture for cities and towns like Kingston and New Paltz? And how can this type of agriculture contribute to the overall goals of agritourism, innovation, education, and identity as an agricultural region? It's kind of a long question. So the first part of the question is, will this plan, or does this plan address urban agriculture for cities and towns like Kingston and New Paltz? And then
Kingston its own comprehensive plan. Has addressed this. And it does, and, we haven't touched urban agriculture. This is how it's actually-
I don't know, Nan, if you had anything to add to that, or yeah, just we should answer questions into the microphones just so that the Zoom, it's picked up by the Zoom.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember through the various strategies. I don't know off the top of my head if there was a specific one about that.
Kingston did a lot of comprehensive planning recently, and they addressed this at length. So at their own scale, basically looking at the city, looking at an area near where I live, and they've done an excellent job. I can't speak for New Paltz. I don't know when the last time they've looked, but they have open space committees that, you know, look into this, at least the town. I can't speak for the village. So.
There's one more question from Kaimara, a different question. It says, is the development of value-added product programs being considered?
Yes.
Yes, there was a lot oriented in the plan to promoting value added, the various strategies for that.
It wasn't one of the priority strategies, but it was part of some of the other
Correct.
strategies in the plan.
Yes, correct.
Correct. That's it from the Zoom.
So the second part of my the USDA facility that I forgot to mention was, even if we do have USDA facilities within Ulster County, how can we get people to actually work in the USDA facilities? Because again, it's hard to get people to even do that kind of production work. And the amount of USDA workers per New York is not a lot. And we just need more USDA workers. So how do we get them?
I've been working with BOCES, SUNY Ulster, and this institution, SUNY New Paltz, to see if we can get meat processing classes. There already are meat processing courses in Delhi,
Cobleskill. Yep.
And I even was able to get one of their professors to come down, or offer to come down to BOCES and teach it at night. But BOCES said that's not allowed because of state statute. It has to be a curriculum or whatever. but we got to get through that hurdle also. So I'm trying to get the state legislature to change those rules of education department so that higher level educators can come to a BOCES or a high school and teach. It's counterintuitive, but that is the situation. So I even spoke to the president of this university. Was it today or was it yesterday? It was yesterday about the course. And I've spoken to SUNY 20 times maybe. So we need to get maybe this group involved. Instead of one voice, we have many voices.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Annie Christian. I'm from Scenic Hudson, a land trust in this area. I'm sure many of you know. So I was just curious in part about the point about 28% of farms being managed by people under the age of 35, and then that sort of in comparison to the statistic about the age of most producers. So I'm just curious about that gap. So the people who are under 35 are working as managers on these farms, or like what's their role?
Well, in the ag census, those are how the data is collected and defined. So there wasn't any, we mirrored the language. So I would have to go back to look at the data. They may be owners, but they may be, so the census, I believe, separates out owners from managers.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking, because obviously farmland transfer and the question of how farms are being, the succession plans is critical, obviously, in the county. And so I just think there's an interesting gap there, and that might be worth, more thought. The other thing I wanted to just consider, I haven't read the whole plan, admittedly. I've read a good chunk of it, but one of the tools that I think is emerging more and more among land trusts and other even municipalities is this concept of buy, protect, sell, where farmland is obviously purchased by some entity and then protected in some respect and then sold. So it might be a worthwhile tool for the county to consider in terms of its priorities. So, yeah.
I just wanted, the ag census, I just wanted to clarify, they do allow multiple owners or managers of a farm operation. Like a farm, when they fill in the census, can put in multiple people. So if you have a multiple generational farm, you could have a 35-year-old, a 65-year-old, and an 85-year-old, and they're all, owners and managers of that farming operation. And that's why you see, that range in there. And that's why they qualify it as managers and owners, even though they may be all part of the same family, just that it's hard to figure out like who has what title.
Yes.
It'll be quick, even though I have a clipboard. I'm Creek from Seed Song Farm and Center in Kingston. And tonight I feel better than ever about having landed to farm in Ulster County as opposed to other places. I already felt pretty good with getting meetings with Jake from Soil and Water. As soon as Deb got a job, she got public input from farmers, and I remember giving suggestions and already seeing them start to be implemented, which is just unbelievable. Very responsive. So thank you for that. I just wanted to say that the CSA model started in Japan after the war, when all the dairy farmers had to start moving to the city to get jobs. And after that happened, all the milk that started coming to Japanese communities was like poor quality, maybe irradiated. Can't remember the exact situation, but it was the mothers and the grandmothers that got together and said, well, we need to do something to support them if we want to have our good quality milk. So I feel like that's what your committee in a large way is trying to figure out how to support the farmers. And I have one suggestion that might be great. generally farmers always have surplus, at least produce farmers do. And it would be wonderful if any county efforts to feed people in need, where food is being purchased for homeless people or hungry people, a good place to start might be the farmer's surplus food so that they could get paid some baseline for that. And then one suggestion would be, I didn't hear it and I might have missed it, and I know it's a large production that you've published, about a breakdown of data on the farm practices or the farm philosophies. I think especially today, a lot of people are very particular about what kind of philosophy, or, is it organic? Is it regenerative? So I think that would be a very valuable thing if you're going to put together a website that is promoting local farming, to make sure that those practices are somehow grouped together, or anyway, that's my point. Thank you.
You can call it a night. Get that work done.
Yeah, I'm just saying thank you everybody for coming tonight, and we appreciate your attendance. You can find the ag plan on the Participate Ulster site, and please make comments there, or you can send an email to Bert Samuelson. And we really appreciate your interest and attendance at the meeting tonight. We will be turning off the webinar now, and hopefully hear from you over email or through Participate Ulster.